Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Faith with Reasons. Ron Finn, along with Shayne Stanfield here for show number 562.
And counting.
We're just the Energizer Bunny here. The shows just keep coming and coming and coming, and the reason is we always book the best guests.
Yeah. It seems like we just celebrated 500. How did we get here?
It's a time marches on.
Wow.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of amazing guests, we're going to be talking about an amazing woman, a young woman, Michelle Duppong, who she is a servant of God. She passed away at the age, early age, like 30, 33, something like that. And Patti Maguire Armstrong has written a book called Michelle Duppong, Hope in the Depths of Suffering. It's by Patti Armstrong and Stephanie Parks, and it's available now from Sophia Institute Press. And Patti is an award-winning journalist. She was managing editor and co-author of bestselling Amazing Grace series. Her latest books are the humorous and inspirational second edition, Dear God, I Don't Get It. Dear God, You Can't Be Serious. What Would Monica Do? And Holy Hacks, all great reads. Patti worked in social work and public administration before staying home as a freelance writer while she and Mark raised their 10 children in North Dakota. And you can follow her on Twitter at Patti Armstrong and read her blog at PattiMaguireArmstrong.com. Twitter, I guess, would be X now, right?
It's X, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, Patti Maguire Armstrong, thank you for coming on. Welcome to Faith with Reasons and here in the Diocese of Toledo.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I'm honored to be number 562.
It's kind of a milestone.
Yeah, you must have a pretty good thing going. You got this far.
They can't find anything else to do with a 4 p.m. hour.
Yeah,
So.
it's that ability to count that high. That's the amazing part.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's right. So,
we'll keep you out of trouble anyway.
That's right.
Absolutely. Some wonderful books there, and of course, in North Dakota. You're not now in North Dakota. We were talking before we went on the air. You lived in Michigan, and you've been kind of all over the place.
Yeah, Montana, Portland. Well, I've been in Montana for 35 years. My husband and I met in Micronesia in the Marshall Islands. So I thought I was getting away from the cold. And then I went right into the epicenter of the cold. But as we were talking before the show, we're having a beautiful 45-degree day here today. So,
yeah, we
do get
weather.
nice weather sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't wait to learn more about servant of God Michelle Duppong. She obviously lived a very short life, died of cancer, and really served the church very well and served her job in parish work. But I know there's a lot of great stories about her, and although a documentary that was put out helps a lot. Radiating Joy, I think was the name of that one. But a book like this really helps us kind of learn more about this wonderful servant of God. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, how you got interested in her and where that took you.
I really was a part of the story in some ways because I knew her. I met her parents many years ago through Mark visiting somebody who invited us out. He had a radio show. This guy had been on his radio show. He said, "Hey, do you mind if my neighbors, Ken and Mary Ann Duppong, come over and meet you?" And we hit it off, and I would often see them at events. We'd go to the same places. I'd been at their house a couple times. I had met Michelle. They had 6 children. And then my husband, Mark, was giving a talk on Our Lady of Guadalupe. We had been out there and had a life-size image in Fargo, and she went to school at the North Dakota State University, and the bishop had a procession, a Eucharistic procession in January. It was really, really cold that January. And Mark gave his talk, and I visited with Michelle and Renee while we were out there. So she was somebody who I knew, and then 8 years from college, she spent 8 years as a focused missionary at a number of different campuses. And her last year, she always wanted to come back to North Dakota. She loved it. She lived in Haymarsh, which is a small, unincorporated area next to Glen Olin, a very small town. And a lot of her relatives are here. Her ancestors homesteaded out here. So she just loved the land, always wanted to get back to North Dakota. And eventually she was able to serve her last year at the University of Mary. The president, Monsignor Shea, also, he is from another small town in North Dakota, and he knew of Michelle. He was a few years older than her. But she introduced him to Focus. He didn't know what Focus was about. So even though it's a Catholic university, he loved the idea of having Focus missionaries there to really enliven and nurture the faith. So Michelle's last year in Focus was the inaugural year at University of Mary.
Really?
And Monsignor Shea wrote the foreword to the book. And then from there, she really felt that her time was over at Focus. And the Bishop David Kagan, hired her to be the director of faith formation here in the Bismarck Diocese. So people knew her. She was a dynamo. As I was writing this book, I thought people are going to fall in love with Michelle because, of course, I got to know her way more than I knew her when she was alive, and just so vivacious and fun, and but such a wholesome, beautiful life, full of love and caring. She, from the time she was a young girl, she wanted to be a saint, and in one of her writings, she said, I don't want to just be a saint. I want to be a great saint.
Mm.
Oh.
And I shared in the book, she didn't just want to be a saint. She wanted everyone around her to be a saint. You know, that she just had this effervescence and love for humanity, and she wanted to bring everybody. And she didn't want to judge anybody, so she just loved everybody, even if, you know, you didn't have to be Catholic. You didn't have to necessarily be on the straight and narrow path, but she wanted to bring you there. And so then, while she was director of catechesis and adult faith formation, basically, and she gave different missions around some of the other smaller parishes, so she got to know a lot of the priests and inspire other people in different parishes. And she asked the bishop if she could put on a conference. And we had an activity out in the diocese, some big event. So people were a little skeptical, like, yeah, we just did a big event. Like, maybe your timing is off. And, yeah, we get it. You're young, but you're naive, too. Like, come on. This is, you know, you think you're going to put on this huge event at the Bismarck Event Center. And the bishop cautiously said, okay, if you think you can do it. Well, there were 7,000 to 8,000 people that came.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, she pulled it off, but one part of the book, when she's having a conversation with somebody, she shares her personality type. And I'm sorry, you know, there's different personality types, and I don't remember the kind that is kind of a perfectionist and wants to be in control of everything. And there's probably people yelling at the radio, telling me what it is. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So, but whatever that type is, she was sharing that was her. And her friend said, what, you, Michelle? She said, yeah, without virtue, I would really be like this. But like in situations like when she was putting on this big thirst conference, she called it Thirst, kind of modeled after Mother Teresa, and, you know, I thirsting for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So when she would start to maybe feel stressed or, you know, not maybe getting impatient, she would pull back and she would give other people tasks to do, letting go of some of that control and always going back to Jesus for help with everything and walking closely with the Lord so that everything was done in a spirit of holiness and love, and monitoring herself so that she didn't let herself get, you know, I mean, I always say Jesus said to love one another because he knew he had to tell us to do that. That it doesn't always come easy, that you can be working on something with a lot of good Catholics, and eventually there's going to be conflicts or turmoils. But Michelle navigated life so beautifully. And I think one of the big things she did, and I interviewed people from her grade school years, from her high school years, her relatives. And one thing, a recurring thing that people said about her was she stayed away from gossip. So especially, junior high girls, you get a bunch of girls together and they start talking, she would remove herself from that situation. And even as adults, even as sincere, dedicated Catholics, it can slip into our life. And somebody who was a coworker with her said, Michelle trusted in Jesus to fix things. So when there was tension or things were going wrong or complicated at the diocese, she did not engage in venting. A lot of times people go, I just need a vent. Well, she would take everything to Jesus. And she put on a little retreat, like, let's have a little mini retreat at the office, for the coworkers. And after all, if you're working for the church, you need that little bit of renewal and being fed also, so you can go out and represent the church or serve others. So I think her staying away from those pitfalls that we all are tempted with, that these are things that we can look at our own lives and say, okay, I see how Michelle did this. I can do that. I can do better. I can avoid gossip. I can, instead of venting, I'm going to take this to the Lord. And you see how her life came together so beautifully. And then, and a lot of people knew her through when she was putting on this Earth Conference. She had a recorded video that was played after all the masses one Sunday, just encouraging people to come. And there was no cost. It was donation, free will offering. And we had some of the top speakers. I know we had Cardinal Dolan, Scott Hahn.
Wow.
We had some of the top speakers coming out.
Wow.
And a lot of times you would think, well, we better make back our money.
Yeah.
And because I've written for so many publications, I write regularly for the National Catholic Register, but I've written for a number of publications over the years. And I was writing an article for Our Sunday Visitor on, we used to have Eucharistic conferences, and then we were having a lot of men's conferences and women's conferences. Well, the Thirst Conference turned into a 3-year rotation from everybody, families, men, women, to then one year it would be a men's conference, which was also very successful. Then the women's conference, then we would go back to the everybody conference. And so I was doing an article on this, interviewing the bishop, and I think she was still alive then. And I said, well, were you concerned about money? And with the free will offering, do you think you make more money doing that or less money? And the bishop said, I don't know. And frankly, I don't care, because this is one of the best ways we can spend money is to evangelize and nourish the faithful.
Wow.
And he said he and Michelle talked about it, and they did not want there to be any hurdles, any roadblocks, to any reason for somebody not to come to this conference.
Wow.
So they were going to trust in the Lord and do the free will offering. And 7,000 to 8,000 people, they came from all over.
Boy, that's amazing.
And it was a 3-day event.
Really? Wow, talk about an inspiration. My goodness, and to make such an impact. Just to remind our audience, our guest, Patti Armstrong, and she is the author of Michelle Duppong, Hope in the Depths of Suffering, available now from Sophia Institute Press. Now, Michelle, obviously taken very young, 31 years old. She died on Christmas Day in 2015. And to live that short of a life and to have mastered the art of avoiding gossip and kind of orienting everything around Jesus, that takes many, many more years. I'm still working on it myself, and I'm a lot older than that. But she was able to do that and really serve as a great inspiration for us. It's no surprise that her cause for canonization is already underway, even just these short 10, 11 years since her passing.
Yes, she died in 2015 on Christmas Day, and her mother said if Michelle could have picked a day, she would have picked Christmas to be
Wow.
joining in the celestial celebration of Christmas on that day. She loved Christmas so much. And the remarkable thing is that after she died, and this is one of the things that often leads to an opening of a cause for canonization, is that the person's reputation begins to grow and spread after they die. And she touched many lives while she was alive, but her parents and the bishop at the diocese, they were getting cards and letters almost daily of people saying, I've heard of Michelle. I've asked her to pray for me. I feel that my prayers were answered. She was such an inspiration. Articles coming out from people who knew Michelle. And her reputation grew so that the bishop, and I attended her funeral. And I should go back a little bit because to her diagnosis of cancer.
Yes.
It was a shock because she felt, pain in her abdomen. And I think it started out as a cyst in her ovaries. And they said, oh, it's just a benign one. And, that often happens. It might go away on its own. And it wasn't going away, so she went in for an MRI, and when it was, since it wasn't resolving itself, she went in for surgery, and they thought it was just going to be a simple little procedure, and they go in, and they said, it's stage 4 cancer, and they gave her 2 months to live.
Wow.
Wow.
So a big shock, and her sister Renee had graduated in nursing from North Dakota State University, all NDSU. All 6 of the kids went to school there. And she said she just felt, it was just instinctive. She felt that she was in between jobs. And so she spent that year accompanying Michelle, which was a big thing, all the different hospital clinics, the cancer center. And her mom was often there, and Renee was advocating for her and helping to care for her. And Renee said, during that year, she cried maybe 5 times. And she said, and when they told her it was cancer, she said that wasn't one of the times that she cried. She just put her head down.
Huh.
And she said she almost wondered if maybe she suspected that was even possible. Maybe that's, but she was strong. And I was part of the story because I knew who she was. And word went out. Word spread, pray for Michelle Duppong. She's just been given 2 months to live. So everybody is shocked. Everybody's praying. And, she ended up going to the Cancer Treatment Center of America outside. They have a number of different locations, and this one was outside the Chicago area. And, they did some, very aggressive treatment. In the end, I think it seems like it extended her life, but in the end, she was dying from some of the side effects of the treatment.
Oh, yeah.
Because, but I mean, she did have cancer through her body. It had really spread. And in that year, when she was in and out of hospitals, in and out of the treatment center, and everyone fell in love with her. Dr. Leo Taberg, he was the ICU doctor, and he said everyone knew about Michelle. Even before he met her, he had heard about her. And he said it was like she was my daughter. And everybody was looking out for her. And when she wasn't there, they'd say, hey, have you heard from Michelle? And when it was kind of miraculous, it looked like she wasn't going to be able to leave the hospital, and she was going to have to die there in the end, in the late fall, early winter of 2015. So it was kind of amazing and miraculous how they got her up on her feet, and she was able to, Father Cheney, who was the chaplain at the Newman Center at NDSU, also has his pilot's license. So he was able to fly her to Mayo once, and he borrowed a bigger plane from somebody. He was the one who was able to fly them home from the Chicago area to get her home to Haymarsh, so she was able to die at home and spend her last couple months there. Not even, well, maybe it was like a month. But when she left, she got up very early in the morning. It took 4 hours for everybody to come and say goodbye to her.
Oh, wow.
From the janitors to the nurses to, somebody had been working as a CNA up on the floor above. And, Michelle had given her advice one night. And she said, tell Michelle I followed her advice and it made a difference. She told the chaplain who was going down there. She couldn't leave her shift. But 4 hours. And you think, that's why in this book, the movie is wonderful, but you can do a lot more in the book, all the different interviews. You have more time to bring people into the story. And many years ago, I used to write for Woman's World, and they really taught me to go from not just journalism, but when you're telling a news story, you got to stay away from emotions and drawing people in and just stick with the facts. But in a story like this, you want people to feel the story and understand it and experience it and to be there in the room, to be there when she's getting her diagnosis. And she looks down on the floor. And then during this, her very beloved Aunt Jean, who I also knew, just a wonderful, wonderful lady, ends up with brain cancer. And so at one point, Michelle was able to go in a wheelchair and go see her dear beloved Aunt Jean. And they just held each other. Here they were both dying of cancer. And Jean's husband said, how is it I'm here in the presence of two saints, two great saints?
Oh, wow.
Because you kind of felt that before her cause was open, at her funeral, her mother overheard somebody saying to somebody else, this person didn't know that Mary Ann was her mother, and she heard somebody saying, I feel like I knew a saint.
Wow.
And also during her funeral, and I checked this out with the bishop, because I don't remember who told me this, somebody said, the bishop's going to wait 5 years, and then he's going to open her cause for canonization. And it turned out to be 7 years because COVID slowed things down quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
But it turned out to be 7 years. And in that 7 years, he was still getting cards and letters. And I said, Bishop, am I imagining this? Were people just talking? But was it possible you were thinking about this on the day of her funeral? And he said, yes, I was. And I asked her spiritual director, Monsignor Tom Richter, I said, do you think this would be a good idea? He goes, what do you think of this? He goes, yeah, I think it would be. And he was her spiritual director. That last year of suffering and the witness. And there were people that said, some of the people I quoted in the book, Michelle, aren't you mad? Isn't this hard for you? Aren't you angry? Like, here you are so young and you were accomplishing so much. And she said no. And she'd point to the crucifix above her bed. If this is what God wants, it's what I want. Yet, she was praying for her healing. She was praying to get better. And she was living her life to the absolute fullest. But in the end, she wanted God's will. She knew that whatever God wanted was going to be greater than what anything she could want. And so as long as she wanted what God wanted and she could align herself to his will, that she trusted that it was the best thing.
So just to clarify, she's given 2 months to live. I mean, that's the diagnosis. And she lived with us. She lived
a year.
A year. Okay. It was
1 year.
It's amazing because it sounds like that in itself was a miracle that they were able to do enough for her to prolong her, her life.
Towards the end, her main doctor had asked her mom, she said, Marianne, was it worth all this, all the suffering? The pain, the suffering, the back and forth, all the trips. She said, was it worth it to extend her life another 10 months? And Marianne said, how can you put a value on all the people that have been impacted by her life? there was something like 250,000 people following the Caring Bridge site, people that didn't know her.
Wow.
And her family, and especially her sister Renee, were keeping it up, and sometimes Michelle would write on it, following her story and praying for her. And Marianne said, how can you put a value on that? You know, that year of her life was beautiful and it was powerful. And like Monsignor Shea and others have said, but he said in the foreword of the book, you know, why would God take somebody in the prime of her life who was doing such good work? You know, why do we have any suffering? And the answer is always for a greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And that you and I would not be having this conversation right now if Michelle had recovered and was out, you know, doing her good work like she had been before. But she's become a daughter of the church. And whether she is ever officially canonized a saint, you know, the fact that the cause for sainthood has been opened is, I've witnessed this up close. I spent 3 days at Ken and Marianne's house, and like I said, I know them and I keep in touch with them. I have witnessed how they had to surrender their daughter. One of the cemetery where she's buried, her home, her farm overlooks it. You can see the grounds because there is, you know, back in the day of the homesteaders, if you've ever gone to these little cemeteries from little small towns, and you look and you can see, you witness life before penicillin, and you see the babies and the children, and, you know, in these little community cemeteries. And Michelle is buried there, and people come from all over. And this was a land that she loved, and here she is. And Ken and Marianne are often hosting pilgrimages and people coming. And they're both in their 70s now. But Ken was still active with the farm, so I don't know if that's still true now, but last spring he still was. And they are welcoming, but I realized after being there, and we just spent our whole 3 days together, other than sleeping, we were together the whole time. And as I was driving home, I thought, wow, I mean, this is a lot to put on a family. And I can hear that brake music.
Yes,
I'm going
yes.
to
We'll have to pick
here.
it up on the other side.
Patti Maguire Armstrong, our guest, and she is the author of Michelle Duppong, Hope in the Depths of Suffering. We're learning so much about this fascinating servant of God, surely soon to be a saint. We'll be right back after this short break here on Faith with Reasons.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
This is Dale Ahlquist with a Chesterton Minute. Have you ever noticed that the world associates fanaticism with religion? But G.K. Chesterton says that the strangest fanaticism that fills our time is the fanatical hatred of morality, especially of Christian morality. It is the irreligious who are fanatical in their hatred of religion. They hate religion because religion is the only basis for morality. They hate morality because it is clear. And they prefer things to be vague to the point where they can call wrongs rights. But we cannot call something a right when it defies God's laws. We can only call it a sin, because all rights come from God, and God is not going to break his own laws. Neither should we. Want more than a minute? Visit our website, chesterton.org.
Annunciation Radio is giving you another way to access all of our great Catholic content. Now catch all of our live local programming on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Go into the studio during Morning Offering with Ron and Dave, Faith with Reasons, or Sing Us to Life with Peter Range. And if you can't view the programming live, our video archives offers everything on demand. Viewing our live local programming takes your faith experience to another level. Annunciation Radio.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shayne Stanfield with Ron Finn, and we are blessed to have with us Patti Maguire Armstrong, an award-winning journalist. It was managing editor and co-author of the best-selling Amazing Grace series. Her latest books are the humorous and inspirational second edition, Dear God, I Didn't Get It, Dear God, You Can't Be Serious, What Would Monica Do, and Holy Hacks. Patti worked in social work and public administration before staying home as a freelance writer while she and Mark raised their 10 children in North Dakota. She can be followed at Twitter, which is now X, Patti Armstrong, and read her blog at pattimaguirearmstrong.com. We have Patti with us today to discuss her latest book, Michelle Duppong, Hope in the Depths of Suffering, which we have to clarify, Patti. Is the book out now, or is it expected?
It is out. Yes, you can order it. It's just released. Oh. The release date was January 20th, but they got it out early.
Yeah, we were
they
wondering.
They were able to be there for the SEEK conference. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect timing, and really, SophiaInstitute.com would be the place to go. If you go to like Amazon, it'll still tell you that it's not
unavailable
yet.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So that's good.
But yeah, once I would definitely go directly to the publisher, and whenever you can do that, whenever I write a book review, I always send people to the publisher. So, let them. Because, Sophia came to me and asked me to write this book, and I wasn't so sure. I thought, oh, my goodness, it's going to be a lot of work. I'm kind of busy. I was doing, 4 different jobs. But then I realized years ago, I had given my gift of writing back to God. And after doing the Amazing Grace book series, which were all bestsellers, and it was wonderful and very uplifting. But then I said, okay, God, if you want me to do any more books, you're going to have to let me know, because I'm not going to go out and send proposals or try to do another book, but I've given you my gift, because I used to write in the secular world. Mm-hmm. I even wrote for the National Enquirer for a short time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, until I started thinking, like, wait a minute, I don't think I should be writing for them. And so it's every once in a while I'll say, okay, God, let me know if you want me to write another book. And it's amazing how I turn the corner and there's somebody contacting me. Would you write this book? Hey, I saw your article. Would you turn this into a book, like with the Holy Hacks? And the same with What Would Monica Do? And the same with this one. So I had written some articles on Michelle Duppong, because here I knew her. I knew the family. I'm in the diocese, and I wrote for the National Catholic Register and Knights of Columbus magazine and some others. And the senior editor there said, hey, I see you've written on Michelle before. Would you be interested in doing a book on her? And it's funny, because I wasn't interested in that. I thought that's going to be so much work, and I don't know how I would have the time. I said, well, let me pray about it, because I did tell God, let me know if you want me to do a book. And I was at a meeting where the bishop was, and I said, well, Sophia Institute has asked me if I want to do a book. And I'm praying about it. And he goes, you're going to write this book. And I said, well, we'll see. I'm talking to the family and I'm praying about it. He goes, no, you're going to write this book. And when I was driving home, and I thought, there's no way I can say no. There's no possible way that I pray like that to God. He lets me know. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, never mind. I didn't, and I can't believe that here it is in January, and it was less than a year that I was asked to write it. And I look at it and I read it, and I'm like, how did this all come together? It feels like a blur. But it's a blur and a blessing, because I feel like it's beautiful for me, because I don't have to second guess myself. I don't have to push ideas on anyone. I just take my marching orders from God, from the bishop, and I can see the beauty of sharing Michelle's life with people, that this is going to inspire and uplift. It inspired and uplifted me, and the blessings, and just bring us to higher ground. And so that we're not only inspired, but come to a new understanding of our faith, and that Michelle leads the way, whether it's just having conversations with people or whatever suffering we have in our life, making sense out of it and using it, whether it's a small suffering or a big suffering. She did little sacrifices and did things and added to her prayers when she was trying to make a difference, long before she had cancer.
Wow. And it kind of feels, Patti, like we're part of the same family here. I know you did a lot of work. Our Annunciation Radio here is part of Ave Maria Radio Communications. And I know you've worked with Renewal Ministries and with the Goddess and with Teresa Tomeo Communications. So it kind of feels like we're all part of the same family here. Now, with Michelle, she taught us so much, and as you mentioned, just communicating with people and getting some great communication going. Do you think a lot of that training came from being a focused missionary?
Well, of course, they give beautiful, wonderful training and inspiration. And she was a perfect fit. So this is surprise. A lot of you are going to be surprised. They turned her down when she applied.
Wow.
And Father Cheney contacted them and said, "Are you kidding me?" And I don't know. I talked to a number of different people, her roommate and good friend, who also became a focused missionary. And I think she didn't put her best foot forward in the interview. And somebody said, I think she started crying during the interview. Maybe it was nerves. I don't know, because I don't know what they were talking about. But they did not accept her. I think she was maybe on a list, like, well, who knows? Maybe you'll get called. And Father Cheney called them and said, you do not want to miss out, because she was such a dynamo at the Newman Center. And she was funny and fun. He said she would do these skits and have everybody laughing, for like their talent shows. She was a dynamo. She'd get everybody involved. And so they took another look at her and gave her a call, and she was ecstatic, when they called her and invited her to become a focused missionary. Now, the thing is, when you become a focused missionary, you got your work cut out for you. You have to earn your own salary. You have to get people to donate to support you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I would not be jumping up and down about a job like that, because I don't like to ask people, to give money. But because they have to humble themselves and to do God's work, and, to find people willing to support them, to go out to these college campuses and light a fire under people. So her very first talk after church, after Mass, there was a priest at one of the local churches who said she could go ahead and give her a little spiel like, hey, I'm going to become a focused missionary, and if you want to hear more and if you're interested in supporting me, I'll be in the church basement after Mass. And so she went there. Not one person came down. Can you imagine the humility? But she didn't quit, and she eventually found people willing to support her. And now, now people would be, not a stampede to support Michelle. If you could go back in time and realize what you were supporting, a future saint, perhaps. So she really, really wanted to serve God. And as a kid, there was a little bit of I think there was a little house fire, or there was smoke. Some of the kids were older, and the parents were out just for like an hour or so. And so the kids were like, left the house right away. And one of her sisters grabbed her piggy bank and her blanket. And she looked at Michelle, this younger sister, and thought, she just brought her junk basket out. But it was her holy cards and medals. That was what was most valuable to her, was her basket of holy cards and other little religious stuff. And I have her actual words from some of her podcasts. And she used to write for the Dakota Catholic Action Diocesan paper, and she had a column there. So at the end of every chapter are, in the words of Michelle, you hear directly from her. And that is very uplifting too, her thoughts and feelings. And she shared that even though she wanted to be a saint and she was very drawn to the Catholic faith and the devotions and praying the rosary, she said it really wasn't until she was in college that she developed a personal relationship with Christ. And that somebody who she was sharing with said, well, have you been telling Jesus all this? And she hadn't thought about that, to talk to Jesus like she talks to her friends. And so that was something that opened up a whole new depth to her faith, in that she would also, from that point on, that was something she also shared with, as a focus missionary, she was making friends. She was mentoring others. She was inviting them to Mass and Holy Hour or Bible studies. And so they kind of they brought into the circle of holiness and enthusiasm. And she wasn't just sitting around. I mentioned earlier, she was fun and had a lot of laughs. And she loved Irish music, and she had a favorite Irish band. And her brother shares how when she was in town, when she was coming back through Fargo, how they all went to this dive bar because there was like this Irish band that she loved so much, and how much fun they had, listening and having fun and dancing. And then, I have the story of her boyfriend, Jesse, that they were serious and even talking about marriage. And he kind of journeyed with her through that. And then his brother, ended up through Michelle's matchmaking, getting together with a good friend of hers. And she tried to get those two together, and finally they got together. And they're married now, and they have children.
Oh, wow.
And it was her boyfriend, Kyle, from Strasbourg, North Dakota, a German town, very Catholic. And his brother, Kyle, and because he had been raised on a farm too, he went out kind of as a farmhand during some of the time of Michelle's illness, so the family could go back and forth, so that Ken could get away. And he was there when she was back on hospice helping. And he said he felt like he was schooled. He attended the school of suffering to see what it looks like and experience the family coming together every night and praying the rosary. The school of suffering is what he called it. Well, now he has a little boy who has a degenerative disease that, short of a miracle, he's going to slowly waste away. And he said, I know what to do now because I witnessed it. And I know how to handle this. And I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't gone through this, because I didn't have that kind of faith before. And he's praying for Michelle's intercession for a miracle for his little boy.
Oh, how wonderful. Now, you've described, it seems to me, a very, very, very humble person. But did anything jump out at you as you were gathering? You were interviewing people for the book, I'm sure. Did you have an awareness about her, about the impact she was having on people's lives, or how many people were following her? I think you said before there was 250,000 people on her blog.
On her Karen Bridge
Karen
site.
Bridge, yes,
but,
yes. Was she she had to have been aware of this, but she had been aware of the positive impact she was having on people's lives. It took her 4 hours to leave the cancer treatment center.
She did, but when you think about you dying from cancer, there's no room for pride.
Yeah.
There's no everybody loves me. And knowing Michelle and her life, she would have known she has siblings and cousins and relatives galore. They're everywhere. So her network, and of all the schools that she attended, being a part of Focus, there would have been an understanding that there was this very strong network that would go out that she was a part of. So I don't know that she would have necessarily attributed it to herself, because remember, there's a lot of people that never even had met her before that were following her. And a lot of people that knew her in life they wouldn't have said, "Oh yeah, Michelle is going to be a saint," because time and time again, even her brother Jeff's like, she's just a regular person. You didn't think she was, levitating and wearing a halo.
Mm-hmm.
And one person said, she was the quintessential. I don't always say that word right. Am I saying this right?
Quintessential? I think so, yeah. That sounded right.
Yeah. I don't know why. I got to have it in front of me if I'm going to
That and
pronounce it right.
sesquicentennial I have a hard time with, yeah.
But it describes, he said she was a North Dakota Catholic girl who was enthusiastic about her faith, and a lot of the young men and women here that are on fire for their faith,
Mm-hmm.
that she didn't seem really any different than them, which is to say it's beautiful to be out here in this kind of place. I've watched, and I mentioned early on that I came here from other areas, and when my husband was getting laid off from his radio job, we prayed for a good place to raise our kids and to grow in our faith. And we were not very well catechized yet at that point. So, but God brought us here, and back then, it's a very different place. There are people coming here from all over because the reputation of the Bismarck Diocese as a flourishing Catholic area has grown. Now, Michelle was a part of that. She wasn't the only part, but she certainly was a part of the growth that we've experienced out here. And so there's a lot of Catholic young people on fire for their faith. Our high schools, our, University of Mary, but even the Newman Centers in Grand Forks and in Fargo, she's not an oddity. She's not like, wow, what a saint she is. It's like, yeah, she's one of those excited, dynamic Catholic young people that we have out here everywhere.
That's encouraging. It really is. Again, Patti Maguire Armstrong, our guest, and the book that we're talking about, and the person we're talking about, the servant of God, Michelle Duppong, Hope in the Depths of Suffering, which is available early. It wasn't supposed to be available until the 20th, but it is available now at SophiaInstitute.com. And this wonderful servant of God had such an impact on so many people in her short life. And really, even in death, I mean, there are stories of the impact that she's made, not only while alive, but since her passing as well. And Bishop David Kagan opened her cause for canonization, and they're gathering the stories, and they're gathering. I guess I don't know if you call it evidence, but different occasions that can contribute to this cause. And of course the church, even now the pilgrims visit her grave and her family farm, so she's still drawing people to her, and the church gave her the title of Servant of God. So obviously they recognize the impact that Michelle has had. So this has been just had to have been a joy for you, even though you had your hands full. You're called on to write another book, but at least it's on this particular person that had to be a joy to commit the time to and the research to and talk to the family. So what kind of an experience was that like, and how did that really impact your life?
Yeah. Yeah, even though at first I thought, oh, how am I going to get this done? And I wasn't jumping for joy. But if I'm going to do something, I'm all in. And I felt like a closeness to Michelle, and what an honor. And to think, like St. Joan of Arc said, my favorite quote of hers is, "I'm not afraid, I was born for this." And I feel like I know I was born to write, because in second grade I was making little books and stapling them together. And it's just a love of mine. And so not that there's not work involved, but when God gives you a gift, it's not just, you're not just skipping along all the time. Sometimes you got to put a little effort in. Excuse me. But it was such a blessing, and I feel like I got to know her better and spend time with her. And I think anybody who reads the book then also is spending time with her. I feel that way anytime I read a book about a saint or a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that you
that's
have
right.
that time, just one-on-one with that person, and they leave you. She wanted everybody to be closer to God. She wanted us all to be saints. So it reminds me of Saint Therese, who said she wanted to spend her eternity working on earth. And that would be what Michelle would want. She wants, whether it's our children or our friends or ourselves, she wants to help us all to get to heaven one day and be with her. And there was, so in the documentary, I was told not to do a chapter on miracles. And at first I fought it. And then I realized the wisdom that, yes, that is the right thing. That's the right call that the bishop wanted, because miracles have to be investigated. We can say, oh, it was a miracle. And we do all the time. Oh, that was a miracle, or this, that, and the other thing. But for the church to declare something a miracle, they are the biggest skeptic of them all. And they look at every possibility of an alternative reason for something could have happened. And it has to go beyond a scientific explanation. In the documentary, the bishop did share a story that was astounding, that somebody who had cancer prayed to Michelle and it was gone. So you would think, her dying of cancer, the cancer saint, she wanted to have children so badly. And she had to have, her uterus, everything removed.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew she could never have children on her own. And so that was hard for her. It was a suffering. And so many people are saying they're praying to her, that, infertile couples. And they're feeling like her intercession is helping them to be able to have children. And then, many, many stories. So, but I thought it was wise that because who am I to decide what's a miracle and what isn't? And to be putting those stories in there, I think we all know that when we pray for somebody's intercession, and here's what the bishop said, that it was remarkable in all the cards and letters that he's been getting, that one thing stood out. Something that kept repeating itself was that regardless of what kind of answer they got or what kind of response, that the thing that everybody was saying was there was like a surrender to the will of God. That even if they were praying, for instance, to be healed from cancer, they would pray for Michelle's intercession and they would experience a new peace of, I don't know what's going to happen, but, God is with me. And I trust in him, and whatever he wants is going to be the best. And that was how Michelle was. So that's kind of a remarkable result from people praying to her.
Yeah, what you just described seemed to me as somebody in Michelle's shoes that was suffering. That was almost like she was imparting that same peace on them, if that's what they were praying for.
And in the end, if we just talk so much of miracles and not of the actual life, that we can be chasing miracles and not going deeper into, that sometimes there are miracles, but in the end, there's always going to be suffering. There, we're not going to live forever on this world. We eventually are going to die. And so there's a deeper meaning. There needs to be more depth to our faith. Not that we can't pray to be healed, just like Michelle did. She prayed for healing, but she also had an acceptance that God was going to do what was best in her life. And in the book, I take people through her time at home. You'll be right at the deathbed there with her family surrounding her, and then, the moment when she does die and the funeral, and what the family was experiencing. And there was even one member of the family that felt they had a message from Michelle the next morning. So it's very uplifting and exciting. Not that they don't miss and grieve their sister, but there was a lightness of, you finished the race, Michelle. You did it. You are with God now. And kind of a lightness and joy that came from that. Not that still, to have a member of your family, oftentimes the family is not still alive. They sure are not living right next to where the servant of God is buried. So there's this added work, or I don't want to say burden because I don't want to misrepresent it, but there's an added responsibility for the family, especially for her parents, as to this cause goes forward, that I've never seen it in any other cause of any other saint.
So this is the first step, servant of God. For those that don't understand the process, this was just recently opened. So this is her, this title, servant of God, is what she's given as this is being investigated.
Correct, servant of God, and that's at the diocesan level. They've decided to open the cause. They opened it with a mass. They opened it 2.5 years ago on All Saints Day, and officially opened the cause, in union with the USCCB, where they presented it to them, for them to weigh in, and they gave our bishop the go-ahead. So then once there's interviews, there's going through all her writings, anything she's ever done, and when that is so ongoing, and when that is complete, and there's no timeline, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, you just don't know the amount of research that's going to go into it, then everything is presented to the Vatican. And then the Vatican reviews it, and if they find everything in order and agree with the diocese that, yes, this person lived a life of virtue, and we think her cause should go forward, then she gets the title venerable. Once a person has the title of venerable, in order for them to be beatified and called blessed, there needs to be a miracle attributed to their intercession. And then once they're beatified, then another miracle, and they would be canonized to be a saint.
Oh, wow.
And really, with such a recent death, I mean, we see, I feature a different saint or blessed every morning on our morning show called Heroes of the Faith. And you see all these blesseds that have been blessed for, 100 years.
Or more.
But, and this particular future saint, I'm kind of confident in saying, it's kind of like the saint we've been looking for. It's kind of like Carlo Acutis, or Pier Giorgio Frassati, someone that we can really kind of latch onto and pray intercessions for and identify with.
Yeah.
So, the more you learn about her, the better. And this book is a wonderful resource. Michelle Duppong, Hope in the Depths of Suffering, Patti Armstrong and Stephanie Parks. It's available now from Sophia Institute Press. Thank you, Patti.